Eating high fiber foods can be really important for achieving and maintaining a weight loss goal. It helps to boost satiety, prevent cravings, and help to feed the good gut bacteria. But even though fiber can be great, there are some high fiber foods that are much better than others at achieving these goals. So if you're looking to increase your fiber intake, you want to make sure that you're choosing the right ones. So today I'm sharing the top 43 high fiber foods using the tier list. Let's dive into it. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's in nutrition human performance. And today's video is sponsored by Thrive Market. More on them in a bit. Okay, so first, criteria. I have 4 main pieces that I'm going to be ranking these foods on. The first is obviously how much fiber. Of course, we want to make sure that these foods are actually high in fiber. In fact, fiber has been found to help raise our GLP-1 hormone, which is a satiety hormone that helps us to feel full and satisfied. The second is nutrient density, because although fiber is important, it actually doesn't contain any nutrients. And if we want to actually maintain the weight loss progress that we're achieving, we want to feel really good in the process. This is where the nutrients in the food is very important. The third is glycemic load for a typical serving. Now, some but not all of the high fiber foods are going to contain some carbohydrates, which means that we also have to factor in glycemic load, which is a measurement of how much a food raises our blood sugar level. The more it raises our blood sugar, the more we can expect it to drop later on, which can result in increased sugar cravings that would work against a goal. And then the fourth is total carb count in general, because if the carb count is really high, then this could work against a weight loss goal, especially considering a lot of people are carb sensitive or insulin resistant. And to put this list into perspective, the American Heart Association recommends between 25 to 30 grams of total fiber per day. And most people get about 15. And to simplify this list, I am breaking it up into 4 categories, with the first being fruit. So let's dive into it. Okay, first up we have raspberries, and raspberries are actually very high in fiber for the amount of sugar it has, especially considering it's a fruit. It has about 8 grams of fiber in 1 cup of raspberries and less than 6 grams of sugar. Plus, it's very high in vitamin C. So I'm actually going to put this up in that excellent category, as well as blackberries, which are pretty similar. And then we have pears, which growing up was one of my absolute favorite fruits. The one pear has about 6 grams of fiber, so pretty decent amount, but it does come with 17 grams of sugar, which could be high for some people. If you're more active, then it's not going to be too much of an issue, but if you're very carb sensitive, then this could be a lot. Pears are also really high in soluble and insoluble fiber, specifically pectin, which is why it's known as one of the foods that could help relieve constipation. I'm going to put this for now, and I might change this. I'll put this in like the borderline good and great, because the sugar content is relatively high compared to the fiber amount. Okay, next up we have banana. Now, one medium banana has 3 grams of fiber, which really isn't a ton of fiber, especially when you consider that there's about 20 net grams of carbohydrates in that one banana. Now, if you eat it less ripe, then you actually do get a good amount of resistant starch, but most people aren't going to eat it when it's like a green banana. And resistant starch is really great for feeding the good gut bacteria. But because we're specifically looking at high fiber foods for weight loss, I'm going to put it in the okay category. Okay, next up we have an orange, and just like banana, it has about 3 grams of fiber for 1 orange. It also comes in at about 12 grams of sugar, which isn't super high compared to some of these other fruits. It's also very high in vitamin C, which is an important antioxidant. But because the fiber content really isn't much to write home about, I'm actually going to put it in that good category, just below pears. Okay, then we have strawberries, which 1 cup of strawberries also has about 3 grams of fiber, and it only has about 7 grams of sugar. Now again, since we are talking specifically about fiber-rich foods, I would not really classify this as a super fiber-rich food, but it is pretty low in sugar, so I'm going to put it on par with the orange there. Okay, then we have apples, which 1 apple will have about 4 to 5 grams of fiber and then 19 grams of sugar. It's also high in soluble fiber, which is really great for that gut bacteria, but because the sugar content is like slightly a little bit higher, I am again going to put it in like that good category. Okay, and then we have guava, and I'm talking about the whole guava fruit, not like guava flavored things or guava juice, but the full guava fruit, which is true for all of these, because when you just use the juice form, it removes pretty much all of the fiber content. But 1 guava has about 3 grams of fiber and 5 grams of sugar. So the fiber to sugar ratio is actually really great, but it's still just not super high. So again, I'm gonna put it in that good category, where it can contribute to some fiber, but it's not going to be like, wow, that's a lot of fiber. Okay, and then we have pomegranate, which is my husband's absolute favorite fruit right now. And I learned a fun fact that the little like things that you actually eat are called arils. Not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but when I was looking into this video, it's called arils. A-R-I-L-S. So one full pomegranate actually has a pretty decent amount of fiber with 11 grams of fiber when you actually eat the arils portion. It's also extremely rich in antioxidants, which has been found to possibly be helpful for heart disease, but it comes in with 41 grams of carbohydrates, which for a weight loss goal, and especially because this is from a fruit, this is just not really great. So I'm actually going to put this in the poor category. Like, this is not something that you really want to be focusing on in terms of fiber. Adding a little bit on there is great, but if you just add a couple tablespoons worth, you're not really getting much fiber at all. So it's fine to use, not in the amounts that you'd actually need though in order to get that amount of fiber. Okay, and then prunes, which I don't know about you guys, but everybody always talks about prunes like being really great for relieving constipation, and that's because it does have some fiber, not actually a ton. 5 prunes has about 3 grams of fiber, but it does contain sorbitol, which can be used to help relieve constipation. It's not like it actually addresses the cause of constipation, but it could help relieve it. Although those 5 prunes that give you only 3 grams of fiber has about 27 grams of sugar, and it's a dried fruit. So because of that, I'm going to put it in the poor category as well. And then we have avocado, which is going to be a fruit, and it's actually very surprisingly high in fiber. One avocado has 9 grams of fiber. That's actually a ton. It also only has 3 net grams of carbohydrates. It's also incredibly satiating because it is really rich in fats, mainly monounsaturated fats. So it's helpful for adding to a meal to help not only boost the fat, but also the fiber content and help to prevent cravings for food. So I'm going to put this in that excellent category for fiber. And then last for the fruit section, we have blueberries. Now 1 cup of blueberries has about 4 grams of fiber, but it also has 15 grams of sugar. So just like a lot of these in that good category, it does help to bump it up, but it's not necessarily like giving you a ton. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in that good category because it also is rich in really important antioxidants for overall health. Now the next category are vegetable and roots, which there's some really sneaky ones in here that you need to be aware of. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Thrive Market. Thrive Market is an awesome online membership-based grocery store, and they're on a mission to make healthy living as easy and accessible and affordable as possible. Plus, they're delivered directly to your door, which for myself as a new mom really helps to save a lot of time and makes my life so much easier. Plus, you can save on every order on high quality brands that I use all the time, like Primal Kitchens or Base Culture, on their website or on their app. And if you happen to find the price lower someplace else, Thrive Market will match the price, always guaranteeing you the lowest price. Plus, orders over $49 have free shipping. One of my favorite things about Thrive Market has always been this filters function they have to help discover different brands that fit your dietary preferences or needs. So if you're plant-based or you're keto or you're gluten-free or you're opting for grass-fed, then you can mark these off to make sure that what you're choosing fits your needs. And you have access to foods that you might not be able to find at your local grocery store, all while saving money in the process. And many of the items I'm sharing today can be found on Thrive Market to make getting high fiber foods into your diet so much easier. And right now you can join Thrive Market to get 30% off your first order plus a free gift valued up to $60. So make sure to head over to thrivemarket.com/autumnbates for 30% off your first order. I'll also have it linked down in the description below so you don't miss out. Okay, so now we have the vegetables and roots section, which most people, when they think of veggies, they think of like high fiber, which can be the case, but actually is not necessarily always the case. And when I was compiling this list for this video, I wanted to see what, like, if you're just to Google search something for high fiber foods, what would come up. And I found this random, I think is Medline article, and it mentions potato as being very high in fiber. So I just had to include it in this list to compare it to the rest. So let's take a look, because one large potato does have 8 grams of fiber, but that does come at a cost of 54 net carbs. Now there's a little hack you can do where you can boil the potatoes and then cool it, and it does help to increase the resistance starch, which does help to slow the release of those carbohydrates into the body. But especially if you are looking to achieve a weight loss goal, there's so many better options. So for potato, I'm going to put this in that poor category because it is also very high glycemic load. Okay, number 14, I'm kind of like mashing a few of these together, and it's broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and cauliflower. Really, you can kind of like put together the whole cruciferous family here. They do have very similar types of nutrient breakdowns. So 1 cup of these various items has roughly 2 grams of fiber. So not really much to write home about, but they do only come with 4 grams of carbohydrates. These are also generally going to be high in folate, high in vitamin C, and also high in vitamin K1. And they're rich in glucosinolates, which is important for liver detox. So they are very nutrient dense, but again, since we're talking about fiber here, it's not necessarily the best option to help increase fiber. Great to include in the diet, but not a high fiber food. So because the nutrient density is pretty great, and because the glycemic load is pretty low, even though the fiber count isn't very high, I'm still going to put it in the good category because it is just generally a good food that can be used during a weight loss goal. Okay, next up we have turnip greens, which is in a lot of places not widely consumed, but they are very, very nutrient dense. And 2 cups of turnip greens has 4 grams of fiber and only 3 grams of carbs. So it actually has more fiber than it does carbohydrates. And like I mentioned, it is very nutrient dense. It's very high in folate, it's very high in vitamin A precursors, and it's also high in vitamin C. So even though it's not super, super high, it is so nutrient dense. I'm going to put it in that great category. Okay, 16, we have acorn squash, which acorn squash is in the squash family, and half a squash will have 7 grams of fiber. It also only has 16 grams of carbs. It's pretty low glycemic load, and it's a great swap to other more starchy foods like a potato. So I'm also going to put it in that great category. Okay, next up we have beets, which beets have actually been studied to help improve overall athletic performance. It's also been studied to help lower blood pressure, and that's because it contains nitrate, which converts into nitric acid within the body, and that widens the blood vessels and make it so that blood flow can more easily happen. And 1 cup of beets has 4 grams of fiber and about 9 grams of carbohydrates, so it's pretty decent, and it has a good amount of nutrient density. So this is where it gets tricky because it's almost similar to blueberries in that sense, but I'm gonna put it between good and great because that additional benefit of the nitrate. Okay, next up we have sweet potato, which 1 medium sweet potato has about 5 grams of fiber, but it does have about 26 net carbs. So it has a lot less than a typical potato, and it's also going to be high in beta carotene, and depending on how much you eat, it'll be between medium and low glycemic load. Now for weight loss specifically, small amounts of this can be a great option, but it's not necessarily something that you want to focus on to help increase overall fiber content, because to get a lot of fiber from it, you'd need to eat a lot of sweet potato. So that's why I'm going to put it down with that banana in that okay section. Again, because we are focused on fiber content here, and using it in small amounts, just like the banana, perfectly fine. Okay, and then we have collard greens, which is kind of similar to turnip greens, where it is very nutrient dense, but they're really, really high in fiber. So 1 cup of cooked collard greens has between 7 to 8 grams of fiber and only 3 net carbs. And because of the high nutrient density, I'm actually going to put this as well up in that excellent section. Okay, this next one might seem like a weird one, but that's corn. Now it was also listed in one of those random articles as like a high fiber food. So I wanted to incorporate it in here just in case you stumble across one of those articles and think like, oh, I should just eat a lot of corn. Now corn isn't necessarily bad. It has its place. I've done a full video on like the best times to use it. I'll have it linked right up here, but fiber just really isn't one of its benefits, because to get 3 grams of fiber from corn, you also get about 28 grams of net carbohydrates. So it's really going to be considered more of a starch than anything. So whole corn, because the glycemic load of just eating whole corn isn't actually too bad, I'm going to put it in that okay section where having it in small amounts perfectly fine. Okay, and then we have artichokes, which is in my opinion the absolute sleeper when it comes to getting more fiber in. If there's a category above excellent, then I would put it in there, because with just 1 artichoke heart, you get about 13 grams of fiber and only 1 net carb. It's also very nutrient dense, and it contains a certain type of fiber called inulin, which is excellent for prebiotic and feeding that good gut bacteria. So for all of those reasons, it is easily getting a spot right in that excellent category. Okay, and then last in the vegetables and root section, we have carrots. This was also one that's typically listed in like a high fiber food list. 1 carrot has about 2 grams of fiber, which isn't bad, but it's also just not very high. But with that 2 grams of fiber, it only has 4 grams of net carbs. So I'm also going to put it in that good section with some of these other veggies. Okay, and then we get into the probably most confusing section for most people, and it's grains and pseudo grains. This is typically what you're told to eat a lot of if you're trying to up your overall fiber intake, but let's see if it actually matches up with the recommendations. So first up, we have a classic of whole wheat pasta. So 1.5 cups of cooked pasta, which is a more realistic serving size than the 1 cup serving size that they recommend, has about 8 grams of fiber. Not too bad, but that comes with 55 grams of net carbs. Plus, it's also going to be pretty high glycemic load. So for that reason, it's going to go in that poor category because it's just too high glycemic load to justify the amount of fiber, especially when we're talking about a weight loss goal. Then we have the more whole, true type of whole grains, with the first one being whole grain spelt. Now, I'm not talking about like the flours, I'm talking about the actual true whole grain like kernels. 1 cup cooked will give you about 8 grams of fiber, but it also gives you about 43 grams of net carbs. It also contains gluten, which for a lot of people is going to be really gut irritating, and it is going to have anti-nutrients like phytic acid, which could potentially block your absorption of a lot of those important nutrients. So even though it has a decent amount of fiber, the nutrient density isn't totally there because the anti-nutrients and the glycemic load is is too high. So it's not one that I would recommend when trying to increase fiber content. So I'm gonna put it in that poor category. Another whole grain we have is barley. So 1 cup cooked will also give you about 9 grams of fiber and a little less carbs with 34 grams of net carbs. It's also high in beta glucan, which is a soluble fiber that you'll also see is high in oats as well. So it's going to help feed that good gut bacteria. And it actually is kind of high in various micronutrients, but it does contain gluten, which for some people is a problem, and it's going to be medium to high glycemic load. So I'm going to put it like borderline poor and okay because it's not so high, but it does still contain gluten that can be an irritant for a lot of people. Okay, and then we have quinoa, which is a pseudo grain. 1 cup cooked has about 5 grams of fiber. It also has about 34 grams of net carbs. It does have some protein, but it's really not great. It's actually a very poor quality protein. I also did a whole tier ranking list of various proteins, which you can check out right here, but it is gluten-free and it does have a decent amount of various micronutrients, and it's going to be medium to high glycemic load. So because it's not as high in fiber as some of these other items like barley, but it does have the benefit of not containing gluten, as well as having some micronutrients, I'm going to put it again, borderline poor and okay. And then we have oatmeal, which oatmeal only has about 4 grams of fiber in 1 cup of cooked oatmeal and 24 net carbs. So we are closing the gap here a bit between the fiber and the net carbs, which is good. It's also going to contain that beta glucan and is medium to high glycemic load. But I will say that because of the way that oatmeal is eaten, where it is typically eaten on its own and not eaten with other foods, it does tend to be pretty high glycemic load. And when compared to other breakfast food items like eggs, it's actually been found to be way less satiating and make you feel hungry faster. So for that reason, again, I'm gonna put it in that borderline poor and okay. And then we have popcorn, which 4 cups of popped popcorn has about 4 grams of fiber, and then it'll have 20 net carbs. Now it's often listed as having really, really high fiber, and that's just because of a measurement error where they're measuring 100 grams worth of popcorn, which is a lot of popcorn because popcorn is made mostly out of air. So you need to have a lot of popcorn to eat 100 grams worth, but a realistic serving size really only has about 4 grams of fiber. Doesn't mean it's a bad option though, especially as a dessert option. It's not something I would like snack on because there is not much satiety to it, but it does make for a healthier dessert option if you did want to have it as like an occasional dessert, like for a movie night. Just make sure to cook it over the stovetop and not in like those plastic bags because then you get some issues with like the microplastics. So I'm going to put it on par with oatmeal. And then we have the last category, which is seeds, nuts, and other. And I want to start off with a very popular one, which is psyllium husk. Psyllium husk really isn't a food. It doesn't contain anything other than fiber. And I'm going to take probably an unpopular opinion here and say that it is a horrible source of fiber. And that's because it lacks other important nutrients. So if you're just trying to get your fiber from psyllium husk, then you're missing out on these actually nutrient-dense, health benefiting options instead. So I know even though it is really high in fiber, I'm going to put it in that poor category because it can really mask some other issues of just eating the wrong types of foods. Okay, and then we have chia seeds and basil seeds, which both are seeds that are very high in fiber. Basil seeds actually has about double the amount of fiber with 7 to 8 grams of fiber per 1 tablespoon, and chia seeds has about 3 to 4. They also are rich in micronutrients as well as some plant-based omega-3 fats. Chia seeds do contain lectins, which can be a problem for some people, so you can always opt for basil seeds if you do want to up it a little bit more and not have the lectins. And I am referring to edible basil seeds, not just like basil seeds that you get out of a seed packet. So for both chia seeds and basil seeds, I'm going to put it up in that excellent category. It is such an easy way to add a lot of whole food source of fiber into your meals. Put it in a smoothie, so easy. Along those same lines, we have flax seeds, which 1 tablespoon has about 3 grams of fiber, and it has a similar nutrient breakdown as chia seeds. So again, I'm going to put flax seeds up in that excellent source of fiber. And then we have green peas as well as split peas. Now these are actually surprisingly pretty high in fiber. They also have a decent amount of plant-based, higher quality source of protein. So 1 cup of these peas or split peas has about 7 grams of fiber. It also only has 16 grams of carbohydrates. It's also going to be pretty low glycemic load. So for all of these reasons, I'm actually going to put it in like that great category. I love adding these to like my low carb shepherd's pie. So good. Okay, and then we have chickpeas, which 1 cup of chickpeas actually has a whopping 12 to 13 grams of fiber. So it's a lot. And if you eat this 1 cup amount and not more than that, it's going to stay low glycemic load, although it does have 33 net carbs. So if you're carb sensitive, it's one you'll want to watch out for. It's going to also be high in folate and have some choline, so it is fairly nutrient dense because it is more low glycemic load, although it does have some higher carbohydrates and it has a pretty high amount of fiber. I'm going to put it in that good/great category. And then we have another popular one, lentils, which lentils is also very high in fiber. one cup has 12 grams of fiber, and it comes with 28 net carbs. It's high in folate, high in B vitamins. In fact, it's something that's often recommended to take during pregnancy, or to eat rather, not to take, because it is high in various micronutrients. It is high-ish in protein, but it's a pretty poor quality protein. Actually, the protein in chickpeas tends to be a little bit better. So I'm going to put lentils actually equivalent to chickpeas in terms of fiber. Now, beans in general, like black beans or pinto beans, do have a decent amount of fiber. One cup usually has about 18 grams of fiber with roughly 27 grams of carbohydrates, and it's rich in soluble fiber, which is really great for feeding that gut bacteria. So for the plethora of beans, I'm also going to put it in that good/great category, although still view these as a starch because they are fairly starchy. Definitely don't view them as a protein. And then we have cannellini beans and kidney beans, which are going to be a little different. They do have slightly lower fiber with 10 grams of fiber per 1 cup. And about 26 grams of carbohydrates. So even though it is relatively high, it's not as high as some of these other beans. So I'm going to put it in the good category right there. And then we have almonds and pistachios, which I'm going to lump these together in one category because they have similar types of nutrient breakdown. Although almonds have a good amount of vitamin E, which helps differentiate it. But for a 1/4 cup of whole almonds or whole pistachios, it is going to have about 3 grams of fiber. And it does have some of those high quality micronutrients. It does also help to contribute to fat content to help boost satiety, which can be great. Just make sure you don't have these on their own, because just eating nuts on their own can cause overeating, because for some people, it can be hard to stop eating nuts when just eaten on their own. So because of that potential, and also because it's not super high in fiber, I'm going to put it again in that good category. Now, sunflower seeds are going to be a little different because although they also have 3 grams of fiber, they actually are much higher in inflammatory omega-6. So it's not one that I would recommend to eat a lot of, because it could really shift the omega-6 and omega-3 balance, which could put the body in more of an inflammatory state. Using a bit of them here and there on top of a salad for some extra crunch, totally fine, but it's not something that you want to rely on to get your fiber content in. So for sunflower seeds, I'm going to put them in that okay category. And lastly, we have soybeans. So 1 cup of soybeans has about 10 grams of fiber, which is pretty great, especially when you consider that it only has 4 grams of net carbs. It also does have a good source of plant-based protein. It's one of the highest quality plant-based proteins, so if you are plant-based, it's a better option. The one big issue are the anti-nutrients within soy. If you are going to use soy, make sure that it is fermented. This helps to break down those anti-nutrients, so you're still getting those important micronutrients too. So for example, 5 ounces of tempeh still gives you about the equivalent amount of protein that a cup of soybeans would provide, but it does have about half of the fiber with 5 grams of fiber. So I'm going to specifically put tempeh on here because I wouldn't recommend just eating a bunch of soybeans because of those anti-nutrients. So I'm gonna put it in like borderline okay/good because the fermented option is so much better. I forgot one, and I can't believe I forgot this because it's one of my favorite forms of fiber, and it's cacao nibs. So I don't have the list out, but just imagine it's up in the excellent category. Cacao nibs, fantastic source of fiber. In fact, 1 ounce of cacao nibs has about 9 grams of fiber. So throw some of that in your smoothie. Really easy addition. Now you can get a lot of high quality, high fiber foods on Thrive Market and have it delivered directly to your door. So if you want to take advantage of that 30% discount plus a free gift valued up to $60, make sure you head over to thrivemarket.com/autumnbates or click the link in the description box down below so you don't miss out on that discount. Now I also did a tier list ranking the best protein sources for weight loss. So if you want to check that out, I'll have it linked right up here. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.